Necrophilia.
The only thing I feel, you know what I'm saying?
Hey. All right. We're back. You're goddamn right. The necrophilia is going in there. Graveyard Shift.
What a way. What a way to...
Graveyard Shift movie podcast episode number 106. I do believe it might not be. I should have probably checked before we did this. But this week,
106-ish.
yeah. This week we're here to do what we were originally going to do last week, but life got in the way of things. So we moved it to today, and that is we're going to watch The Fly from 1986, a remake of the 1950-something cult classic starring Vincent Price, I believe. I think it's a Vincent Price movie.
I've never seen the original. I didn't realize there was an original.
Yeah. But yeah, it's also directed by David Cronenberg, which I believe, Tyler, as I was skimming through, I think this is the first David Cronenberg movie we've watched. He's been in other movies that we've watched, but I think this is the first one he's directed that we've watched. So shout out to David Cronenberg. We're here to...
Now, Reanimation Man, isn't that like his big one? But he's just in it, right? He didn't make that one? The Reanimator, I think is the name of it.
Did he do Reanimator?
He's the main guy in it. The main villain.
What?
He's the main dude in it. The evil scientist dude is Cronenberg, I thought.
Is there evil? I mean, are you thinking of Nightbreed?
No. Maybe I'm just wrong.
I
thought Reanimator was him. I thought he was the Reanimator.
No, I don't think so.
The guy stabbing people with the juice.
He did Videodrome, which is a movie that I'm gonna pick later. I don't know if you've ever watched it. Sorry, James Woods. It's pretty weird. He did Scanners, which that's classic. History of Violence is him.
History of Violence.
Yeah.
That Viggo Mortensen movie?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I said that like jokingly.
No.
But that's the one where he's the bartender, right? Or the diner?
Yeah. Yeah, he did that.
That came out like recent. I thought
2005. Yeah. Nah, he made a movie this year. Crimes of the Future.
Straight to Shudder.
It might have been. I don't say. Anyway, wow. Viggo Mortensen was in that too. Damn, is Viggo a recurring star in David Cronenberg movies?
Did Cronenberg make Lord of the Rings?
David Cronenberg won 7 Oscars. I don't know how many Oscars Lord of the Rings. Anyway, we're here to watch The Fly from 1986. I would go ahead and call this one a classic movie at this point. It's sort of, when people talk about classic horror movies, this is one usually brought up. I liked it. I think me and Tyler might disagree. I'm not sure, but me and Tyler might disagree. I'm gonna give it a 7. I thought it was fine. A little old. It takes a while to turn into an actual horror movie. But I liked it. I didn't really get too bored with it. When the build up was going on, can't complain. Well, I mean, I can't complain. There will be complaints in this podcast, but I'll give it a 7. Tyler, what are you gonna give this?
So, this is gonna sound weird because these are movies I don't like, and for the record, I wasn't that much of a fan of this movie. All this being said, it gave me very Clive Barker Hellraiser vibes later on in it. When he was like, "We could be great, we could be good," blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it had a very Candyman / fucking Hellraiser vibes to it for me. And I don't know why. But the whole time I was like, maybe it was just the tone and like the pacing and everything.
Uh-huh.
But I was like, oh, this is so dumb. Like, I didn't understand anything the guy was doing. Because he's supposed to be this brilliant scientist.
I didn't either. He was just a fly.
Yeah, but you figure he could, with his miracle AI that he had, could he just teleport himself and say, hey, remove the fly stuff?
Well, that's what, one of my main complaints is when we get to it, is like, they introduce a problem with the teleportation device, and they're like, how are we going to figure this out? and then he makes like one speech about steak, and then it's
Yeah.
fixed. They never show you the process of how he fixed it, but anyway, keep going.
But I mean, it is a classic. Everyone needs to watch it. It's okay. I'm gonna give it like a 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because like I wouldn't tell anyone to watch this unless you consider yourself like a horror fan and you haven't seen it. Then I'd be like, well, you gotta watch it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's my second time watching it. It's very dated. Like if you came out with those effects now,
yeah. I would say it's my second time watching it, but it's also probably my first time watching it because, like, the first time watching it, I was like 7 or 8. So this is probably the first time that I had an understanding of what was going on.
the only thing I don't remember from my first time watching it was she wasn't a hooker, but like the girl from the bar.
Uh-huh.
That I've forgotten all about that. Like 100%.
I forgot how he turned into a fly. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I forgot the whole teleportation thing. I thought his whole goal was to turn into a fly.
I'm not sure. Did you watch this movie?
He was like, this would be cool. But little did I know, he did not set out to turn into a fly. It just so happened that a terrible accident occurred.
People may not know this, but I'm not a fan of Jeff Goldblum. I don't like him at all.
I think you've said it the last 2 podcasts.
That being said,
Uh-huh.
I think he was probably the best part of this movie.
He's pretty
The
good.
quirky scientist thing
Yeah.
was pretty solid.
Yeah, it's also weird watching this era Jeff Goldblum where he's not playing Jeff Goldblum playing a movie. You know what I mean? Because now every movie Jeff Goldblum is, he's just playing like an exaggerated version of Jeff Goldblum, what people see him as. And he's kind of like Christopher Walken. Like anything Christopher Walken's in nowadays, he's not acting. He's just playing Christopher Walken. But yeah, this is him like actually acting. It was weird.
What was that movie I watched with Christopher Walken where he was like a mercenary and he was overthrowing an African government? I watched it on YouTube and I was like, you need to tell your dad. It wasn't Deer Hunter. It was Reservoir Dogs or something like that.
No, it wasn't Reservoir Dogs.
It wasn't Reservoir
Stop
Dogs.
pointing that gun at my dad.
Dogs of War, I think is what it was called.
Yeah, you see it. I brought it up to him. Man, that's something. I want to say I'm the only person in the world who has ever attempted a Christopher Walken impersonation, but it's him replacing the fucking guy in Reservoir Dogs who is like, don't point that gun at my dad. I don't remember that dude's name. He's dead as fuck, though, nowadays. Speaking of dead people, R.I.P. James Caan. We're doing this podcast the day James Caan died. What's your favorite James Caan role, Tyler?
Because this is a horror podcast, I'm going to say Misery, but it's really Godfather.
Oh, mine is Elf. That's mine.
No, I take it back. Bulletproof.
No, you were just talking.
I said it earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said it earlier. I was like, fuck that guy. He tried to make Adam Sandler suck his dick. That's a part in that movie if y'all haven't seen it. Bulletproof. Yeah, you need to watch it. It's good stuff.
Anyway, well, hey, spoiler warning.
Oh, apparently, never mind. You can read chat. But we were all wrong.
We were all wrong. Let's see.
Spoiler warning for The Fly, starring Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis?
Gina Davis, yeah. Yeah, so...
I think that's it.
And David Cronenberg is an abortion doctor.
And the editor guy was someone who was known, but I didn't know who he was.
I don't know him. Yeah, so first off, because I always like doing it, Jeff Goldblum, his second appearance on the channel, his first on the... Or no. Did we do Jurassic Park as a full episode, or was that overtime?
Overtime or smoke break? No, we did it.
I think it might have been a regular...
Papa Hades wanted to watch it, so...
He did. It might have been an overtime.
It might have been... I'm looking it up right now. You keep going.
Okay. Either way, Jeff Goldblum, his second appearance, previously when we did Jurassic Park. Well, I was gonna say, depending on what Tyler finds when he's doing this, this might be his first appearance on the actual show, not a bonus episode. And Gina Davis making her second appearance on the podcast. She was previously seen in Beetlejuice. So shout out
It was an overtime.
Overtime, all right. So yeah, Gina Davis is back, and then David Cronenberg, like I mentioned, making his second appearance on here. From he was the bad guy in Nightbreed, and yeah, now he's an abortion doctor. So quite the two roles he's had. Which that mask he used in Nightbreed gets ripped off all the time now. So shout out to Nightbreed, and that's cool. My first complaint, Tyler, of The Fly. Get ready, kids. What a boring ass title card and credits. Like, it was just like some piano music, and then it was like The Fly, and then it was just credits. You know what I mean? Like, there was no excitement. Like, spice up the credits a little bit.
The movie from 40 years ago.
Listen, that doesn't matter.
Texas Chainsaw started off in 1976. There was a man who was found.
That's cool as shit. And then right after that, it went.
They couldn't afford that. They got the piano on this one.
Yeah. Also, I didn't know this before we watched this. Apparently, Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis were actually married in real life. They got married in 1987, so I would assume they met on this movie, unless they were dating before this. I think they split up in like 1990, so they're no longer together. Now Jeff Goldblum is dating some like 38-year-old, or they might be married at this point. So shout out to that, I guess. But yeah, so the movie opens up with Gina Davis at a like science convention, a bunch of scientists just talking about science and shit. At this
I was like, where are you going with this one?
Yeah, at like this little bar or restaurant type place.
I think it was like a hotel, like
lobby or something.
No, what are they called? The fucking
ballroom.
Ballroom. There you go.
Yeah. So she's here mingling with people, and eventually she walks up to Jeff Goldblum, who tells her that what he's working on is very secret, and he can't talk to her about it here, but he would like her to come back to his lab, and he can show her what he's been working on. And she says that people here are working on stuff that they say will change the world, and he goes, yeah, but mine actually will. And apparently that convinces her to go ahead and come back to his lab, which at first I thought he was just like in a shitty New York apartment, and like that was going to be his lab. But I think he might own this whole building or something, because he had like that whole floor to himself, it seemed like. From like
ironically, he has a situation that I want for us.
Yeah. And he's just rocking up here with his lab. He lets her in. I like this part a lot, where he sits down at a piano and he starts to play his own score to the movie, where he'll be like, "Now I can't let you leave," and he's like, "Dun dun dun," And I got a kick out of that. It was funny. So he shows, or Gina Davis is like, well, where is it? And he's like, you're looking at it. And she's like, very funny, you're wasting my time or whatever. And he's like, no, it's this pod and this pod. And, or actually there's two pods that are like the final pods. And then there's one more that he goes, that was the test pod, or like the prototype pod that he made. And she's like, okay, but what does it do? And so he's like, well, do you have some jewelry or a piece of clothing I could borrow? And she's like, okay. And then we have to watch for a minute as she like peels down her stocking, and Jeff Goldblum is like, like, what? Yeah. It was really, I get they're trying to play up the sexual tension we have going on, but It just, yeah, it went on for a while. Also, why couldn't she just give them like her shoe? Why did she have to pull down the stocking? Even though, to be fair, I think she was going there looking for some brindle dick.
I think it was like half and half. I think she really wanted a story,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, she's like, I might as well get some dick in if there's no story.
Yeah. Um,
But
I
watching her
gotta
take
be
off that
honest, by the way.
pantyhose, I was like, this isn't hot at all. I mean, what?
Yeah, I gotta be honest about it. Speaking of hot, it's a known fact that the ladies find Jeff Goldblum to be incredibly attractive, and I've always been like, I don't know, like he's a kind of weird guy. Man, I tell you what, watching this movie, and he's got this long hair and all this shit, I was like, you know what? I see it, ladies. I see it, ladies. Um, so she gives him the stocking, and he puts it in the pod, and he goes over to his little computer, and he does a little.
I'm
And
sure back in the day that was like the fanciest setup.
yeah,
It was like one keyboard glued to a two by like a piece of
yeah,
plywood with a screen tape to it or
uh huh.
whatever. But back in the day, they were probably like, "Wow, look at
It's
that!"
always funny watching old movies that are supposed to have these super computers and sophisticated AI and stuff, and just watching it and being like, man, this is. So what's the thing they always say? Like the first space shuttle only had like the same power as the first like iPhone or something like that.
Yeah, the amount of technology in your iPhone
Yeah,
was more than the Apollo missions or whatever.
yeah. So that tells me that you can fly your iPhone to space. Try it out, kids. Jump,
Bluetooth
go
jump. Where you
roof
gonna how
of
you gonna
your
jump this?
house with your iPhone, and you can fly.
Well, I mean, you could make the argument that the iPhones of the day connect you to the internet, which gives you this vast world to
Yeah,
explore,
yeah,
which is as large as the solar
yeah.
system. But I know that you weren't being figurative. You actually want little kids to hurt
I wanted
themselves,
little
which
kids.
is
Yeah.
kind
Now
of fucked
thinking
up.
about it, clearly it's a joke, kids. Don't try that. But I was like, as I was saying, I was like, damn, I wonder if someone could just come across this and then have their kid jump off and then take it and be like, look, and then we get sued.
Yeah, they could have all seven of my dollars.
Yeah. Uh, anyway, he gets the stocking, puts it in the one pod, hits his little keyboard, and then inside it goes, and some lightning shit shoots out, and the stocking disappears. And she starts making fun of him. And she's talking about, oh, good, you created the world's largest microwave and shit. But he's like, no, no, come over here. And he takes her to the other pod, and he opens it up, and her stocking is right there. And then he's like, I've created the world's first teleportation device. And she's like, all right, stop joking. Is this a hologram? It's like, what? You think? But yeah, so that's his big science project is he's trying to discover, well, not this, he's discovered it, but he's working on teleportation. That's his world changing, discovery. Which, I'm sure like over time, if this dude got more funds and like they were able to work on it more, it could become something. But at the start, it was like, how is this? Because you would need the one pod and then have another pod, wherever you needed to go. So it's like, this isn't just everyone can have one of these. You know what I mean? And then it's like, it wouldn't be useful. I was trying to think of it in like, what if we needed to get the firefighters over here? Like, could we teleport? You know what I mean? But they didn't think that far ahead.
Crazy thing is they don't think about like materials, right?
Yeah.
So if I could teleport you a sandwich
Uh huh.
and I can put it in there, it scans it, and then it makes you my sandwich, quote unquote, teleports it over to you.
Yeah.
Then what if I accidentally sent that information over twice, and then you got two sandwiches, and then we're
Fuck.
duplicating sandwiches, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the Star Trek thing, to where it's like a replicator also.
Mm-hmm.
Go into that, but if you think about it, like all forms of transportation would be dumb. Like no more semis, no more
Yeah.
anything like that. You could just teleport everything where you needed it to be.
Teleport that shit.
But everyone would have to have one, which is
Yeah.
like, oh, that's crazy talk. But they said the same shit about the telephone.
Uh-huh.
So because back in the day, you'd have to like go down to like the store to use the
Yeah.
phone, and now there's one in every home. Well, now
Yeah.
there's none. But technology.
Um
iPhone.
so yeah, so he's telling her, yeah, I'm working on teleportation and all this shit. And then at first I thought she was just being a super like sleazy reporter lady, which I think kind of she still was. But she pulls out a fucking recorder and starts recording. And I was like, "Oh, you dirty bitch." Um and he's talking about like his experiments and shit. But then she pulls out the tape to like change the tape. And he's like, "What is that?" And she's like, "Well, don't this is my interview or whatever." So I don't think she like that line would tell me that she wasn't doing that as like I'm gonna get him because she took it out to change it in front of him.
Yeah, like right in front of them.
Yeah, she just thought he was giving me permission to come here and interview him for this story. But he's like, "Nah, you can't write about that shit." And then she does turn into an asshole where she's like, sorry." She just runs out. And he's like, "Wait a minute," And so then once again, me thinking, how does it turn into the situation it does? I'm like, well, this is it. She betrays him here, so he turns himself into a fly to kill her. But yeah, so she takes the news story and runs away. She goes to her boss, which is like, or I guess it's her editor. I don't know if he's technically her boss at this newspaper, the magazine that she works at, and plays her the tape of everything that happened. And the dude's like, "Well, you fell for an old bar trick. He's just a con man, He, just had a duplicate ready to go, and I can't believe you fell for that shit." And she's like, "But I saw it." And he's like, "I know. I still makes it even weirder that you fell for it and shit." So he doesn't believe her. So he's like, "We're not gonna run that story." As he is going to leave, Jeff Goldblum shows up to the newspaper place, presumably to like try to get his story back. But dude doesn't believe him anyway, so he just sort of lets Jeff Goldblum in. And he's like, "Try not to make anything disappear while I'm gone." And he walks out. And so Jeff Goldblum is left alone with Gina Davis, and he asks her to go and get a burger with him because he had a proposition.
Have I told you about burgers or whatever?
Yeah.
The way he does it, I was just like, what the fuck?
It was something weird. So yeah, he takes her out to a burger place, and as they're eating, he offers her the story, but not just a story, not just a piece in a magazine or anything. He wants to offer her a whole book. He wants her to come with him and go through every experiment, every little fall or setback and success and all this shit until he's able to teleport a human person between the pods. And then she can write a whole book, and he'll be there to help her with the notes and all this shit. And so, which to me, as I was like, man, that's a pretty nice offer. I guess you could be like, well, I just need the story now, and you could stick with your magazine job where you could look at the big picture. So she agrees. They leave. She goes back to her apartment, and as she goes in, she goes to the bathroom, and her editor is in the shower, taking a shower. And she's like, "How the fuck did you get in here?" And he's like, "I still have a key." And so she like flushes the toilet on her way out to like burn him or whatever. What's up?
Got him.
Yeah.
He'll think twice about
Is that?
that.
I don't think that's a thing anymore.
It is.
Is it? Because I swear I've been in the shower and someone will take shit and flush and it doesn't like burn me.
Mine, it circumvents the cold water.
Okay.
So if you're taking a hot shower and they flush the toilet, then the cold water goes to the toilet and the hot water is on its own. Excuse me.
Oh, a double.
It's because because I tried to make the first one like haphazard, right?
Uh-huh.
Like
It was like, no, motherfucker.
trying to half it,
We're
yeah.
coming
And they're
out.
like, no, gotcha.
Yeah.
But it does with mine. So.
Okay. But yeah, so this is when we find out, apparently, I assume that maybe they were just banging, but I think they used to be in a relationship for I don't know how long, but enough to where they were living in the same place. And he says he's kept the key around in case she ever came to her senses and wanted him to move back in with her. This is one of the many scenes we will get of him trying to convince her to either sleep with him or let him move back in. At one point, he has a line where he just goes, after this is all over, can I claim your body? And I was like, that's a really fucking weird.
Yeah.
This dude's such an asshole and such a weird guy through this movie. And then I think they tried to give him a redemption arc in the middle. And I was like, this guy is not redeemed at all. Like, he didn't do anything. But, I don't know.
I wasn't a fan of him. I want to say it was like way too over the top, but I want to say if you watch a lot of movies from back then, there's guys like this in all of them, and I'm like, maybe those whole women's right things are onto something because they make this lady out to be like just a whore, right? Like, and all this stuff, and I'm like, guys, she was actually just doing her job and fell in love, and they're like, spending the night, are we, and all this stuff, and I'm like, good lord.
Really. Speaking of, I gave Jeff Goldblum credit. By the way, Gina Davis back in the day, good looking gal.
That's crazy that you noticed the dude first.
Sometimes. So he's here. Oh, Tyler has an alarm set.
No, it's someone calling me.
Motherfucker.
No, I'm not answering.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he's here basically to kind of just talk her into banging and all this shit, but she's like, get out of here, and she kicks him out. She's like, give me the key, and he's like, I think I'll keep it. So he still keeps the key, and part of me thinks, because Gina Davis doesn't insist on him giving the key back, part of me thinks that Gina Davis, hasn't put him fully out of her mind yet. Which might come back for something later that I was like, what? Why would you do that? But she still has some feelings for him, and she's like, I don't want him to get. Maybe this is one of the things where, like, we look at this guy like he's an asshole, but maybe this is how he is, and like Gina Davis, like, I don't know. It's so weird how much she puts up with from this guy.
As a person who gets that a lot, where this guy's just kind of an asshole, but once you get to know him, he's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah,
it just means that you're just an asshole. That's funny.
Yeah, that some people like.
Yeah, that's all that means. Like, yeah, people say it about me all. People say it about other people all the time.
So the next day, they're at the lab, and we're doing our first experiment, which is we're taking a fucking baboon. And we're putting it in the one pod, and we're teleporting that bitch. And we do it. We teleport him. And then they're like the smoke in the pod, and they're getting up all close. And then the baboon like wah, and smacks a hand on the glass, and you're like, oh, what's and they open it up, and then the baboon is turned into like that pile of dogs in the Thing, and it's just like all melted, and it's just like it's just like that. And they're like, oh shit. And according to Jeff Goldblum, the baboon has been turned inside out, which I don't think is true because I didn't see any bones and shit in there. It looked like it was just a pile of goop.
And fucking the baboon was like still moving too. So
yeah.
That doesn't work if your inside's on the outside.
Then there's this really weird thing that they throw in that never comes back up that I don't believe. Where Jeff Goldblum is still wearing like the same pair of clothes, and she's like, you wear that all the time or whatever. And he's like, oh yeah, I just buy the same outfit over and over again. So like his whole outfit, part of me thinks it's a very clever way for them to not have to change it. It's like a video game character where you'll play this video game character for hours and he never changes clothes. And part of me thinks that's just their clever way of being like, well, he owns the same pair of clothes, you know?
Well, it's
Um,
funny because like Steve Jobs is known for that, but
yeah.
like Steve Jobs wasn't a thing back then. Well, he was, but
Hmm.
no one knew what he was wearing. The same with Mark Zuckerberg and maybe Bezos, but they all do that same thing where they're like, it's eliminating choices in your life. You don't have
Yeah.
to think about it. You just put on the, and I'm like,
Is
yeah,
there a cartoon that the characters change outfits in between different shows? I was just thinking about it, and
uh,
like that's a thing. Like a cartoon, the guy has the one that like that's how he looks. And I was trying to think, have they ever made a cartoon where like there's different outfits every show? Like
not
they
that I
dress
know
like
of.
normal people, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
We're on to
no,
something, Tyler. We don't have anything to go on for the show or what it's about, but we know they're gonna change clothes. And that's gonna sell the show. We're gonna pitch it. So listen to this, guys. Don't
yeah,
don't
but the
call us
reason they do
crazy.
that is because they can reuse animation sequences. They don't have to do everything from scratch every time.
I know, but we're gonna make it hard on ourselves. Just
Make it
for
hard
the
on them.
yeah,
Neither one of us can draw for shit.
exactly.
Got them
So he owns the same pair of clothes, which that's just a thing they throw in there. And then they're
for no
fucking.
reason. Yeah,
Like it goes from that to her climbing onto his little futon bed, and they start banging. Which I would like to believe that some time has passed and like they've been working together for a while in the lab, but it seems like it's the very next time they're together.
yeah. It seems like that fucking baboon's still rotting downstairs, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Um, yeah, so they bang. Uh, and then after they get done banging, Jeff Goldblum rolls over onto like a microchip or some razor. I don't, whatever it is.
yeah,
What's up?
yeah. I think microchip was probably the
That's,
best
yeah.
explanation for it. Yeah,
It
and
digs
it
in.
stabs into him.
Yeah, it digs into his back, and to the point like when they pull out, like it comes out of his back, and he's like, ah, and I was like, oh, that's it. That's how he turns
That's what makes him.
into a
That's what makes
fly.
him turn into a fly. He's like, I'm turning into a fly guy now. Fuck these chips.
um, yeah, and so then, and also it added to my suspicion because then she's like, we need to clean it, and he's like, ah, it's fine, and I was like, oh, this is it. um, yeah, so then I wrote this down. They keep talking about flesh throughout the like they use the word flesh a lot. Uh, to the point that I've only watched a couple Cronenberg movies, and Videodrome is all about like the new flesh and shit, and they say it all the time. And so I'm now wondering if this is like a thing where every Cronenberg movie they talk about flesh. Um, But I laugh because in my notes I look down where I mentioned this, and then right under I said "Long live the new flesh," which is a Videodrome reference. And see, past Thomas and future Thomas were thinking alike. Um, this is when Gina Davis is talking about this flesh thing, uh, and then Jeff Goldblum's like, "I got it. Wait right here," and he leaves, and then he comes back and he has two steaks. And he has her eat the one, and she's like, well, it could use some seasoning, but, it tastes like a steak. He's like, all right, good. And he's like, taste this one. And so she takes a couple bites of that one, and she's like, nah, this one sucks, And so she spits it out. And so somehow, through this steak test, Jeff Goldblum is able to decipher that the problem with because the whole I think mention what the problem was, but not exactly what it is. They can't teleport living people or animals or anything. They can only teleport inanimate objects. So that's why they're doing like the baboon and all that shit. So he tells her that the problem is that the computer is just interpreting what he thinks flesh is instead of duplicating, because he hasn't been able to learn to love the flesh or some shit, right? Because Gina Davis was all nibbling on his back and licking on him, talking about, I love your flesh, which is very weird, but whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and so he's able to, from that steak thing, be like, this is the problem. I gotta teach the computer to love the flesh. Uh, so that's cool. Do they ever show you how he does it? No.
No, well, they show him have like kind of a montage at the computer.
Crunching numbers, yeah.
So my question
Is this before or after he starts walking around in like the tiniest tidy whities I've ever seen in my life? I think this is before. Yeah, because I think he was starting to get fly powers. Yeah.
My thing is, you do this, and then do you go and try the steak again? No. Get the other baboon in
Yeah,
here,
get that motherfucker in here.
It's like, what, you just showed that you could do this with normal stuff.
Yeah, it's like, why are we sacrificing? Like, those baboons can't be cheap.
He says he gets paid for his funding or whatever, and they didn't care because it wasn't that expensive.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so he has this big breakthrough. He starts working on this flesh thing. And she leaves. She's like, I gotta go fucking buy some shit or whatever. So she leaves, and as she's driving away, we see that her ex, the editor dude, is out in his car, like, watching her leave. And he ends up following her to this store that she's at, and he confronts her, saying that, you know, she wasn't after the story. You know, she was just up there being a whore, staying the night with him. I will say he does have one line that I went, ha, when he said it, which is, she's like, I'm on to something big here. And he's like, yeah, his cock. And I went, ha, I got her.
Got her good.
Yeah. But yeah, he's like berating her in the store, and then it turns into him like begging for her to take him back. Like, very weird. Like, gets down on his knees and shit, and he's like, I want to move back in or something. I don't know. And then I think she's like, fuck off, and she leaves.
Well, no, they got he got the picture, right? The magazine was, the dude was going to publish him on the cover, and it freaked her out, so she had to leave to go fix that or something.
Well, that was after.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Yeah, spoiler.
God.
Yeah, so she leaves. And then we go back to the lab, and they're teleporting another baboon. And I was like, oh no. And they teleport him, but this time he comes out alive. And then Jeff Goldblum gets a nice baboon hug, like full on, like baboons tucking the head and the shoulder and shit. Yeah, and so he's like, we did it. We successfully teleported the fucking living person. But he's like, well, we won't test, try ourselves until we send some tests off to make sure everything's okay with the baboon. And he's like, that could take like 6 weeks. And so the girl's like, oh, okay, well, 6 weeks, why don't we take a vacation, just the two of us, And Jeff Goldblum's like, is this a romantic thing we got going on? And she's like, yeah, I think it is, And he's like, all right, sounds cool. He starts to order some Chinese food, and she walks over to like the kitchen table where she sees a letter like with her name on it, and she's like, "Oh, what's this?" And he's like, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, someone left that for you." So she opens it up, and this is when she sees it's gonna be the cover of the next issue of the magazine, which is like a drawing of Jeff Goldblum and a thing of teleportation, and it's like scientist breaks the and so. Yeah, and so she's like, I gotta go deal with something real fast. And he's like, but I'm ordering the spicy
Parmesan or something, eggplant,
spicy eggplant. Yeah, the spicy eggplant. It's like, okay, but she's like, oh, I gotta go. Yeah, so she leaves, and she goes back to the magazine place to confront the editor dude. Yeah, and basically, he sent this out as like I can ruin your story and get it out before you. She's like, I didn't think you even believe me, and he's like, yeah, well, I learned to trust your gut. And then maybe you are able, like, because you just watched this movie, so maybe you're able to know better, but somehow he convinces her here just to like work with him. You know what I mean? He's like, why don't you just keep me in the loop? I don't want you out of my life. But I don't know how he managed to talk her down. Do you have anything else, or you have the same as me, where he's just like, "Hey, I want to be in your life."
She tells him that he's on the verge of a major blah blah blah, and she's right in the middle of it. And this is the big break she's always waited for, this and that. And it's something like, don't you want to be a part of this and not on the other side or something?
Mm.
So then the guy's like, listen, you just keep me updated. We'll put it off and we'll wait till we get further along, you know. That's when he gives him that thing. So there was no, like, dirt or nothing.
Okay.
Like, in today's society, there would be, right? Like, listen, I'm going to tell everyone that I've seen your dick.
I got you.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so then we go back to Jeff Goldblum, who's in the lab, and he's getting drunk as fuck, and he's venting to his baboon. He's talking about, you know, which, to be fair, I think it's a reasonable thing that he's saying, where he's like, you know what, I bet you she's still working with the mag, and this whole thing is just her getting, you know, because she's already tried to take the story once, and he's like, this is all just trying to get closer into the story so she can take it to her magazine and do all this shit. And he's like, I bet she's fucking that editor dude too. And as he's doing this, the baboon keeps getting harassed by this fly, which the fly, believe it or not, people, the fly will be a very important part of the movie. But I just couldn't help but laugh at this fucking baboon just like, what the fuck? Just like so irritated by this fly. But yeah, so baboon's fighting with this fly. And the dude, Jeff Goldblum, is like, you know what? You're alright. We don't have to. Let's fucking do this thing now. So he strips down naked, because I guess you can't teleport with clothes on. Yeah, that would, because then you have to.
You'd be half clothes.
Half clothes, yeah. That's how the Killer Pants happened. Have you ever read that book, Killer Pants? No. I've never read it either. Is it about Killer Pants, actually?
Is it the same as the girls with the traveling jeans or whatever?
I thought it was the girls with the traveling killer pants or something.
No,
it's going to turn out...
other movie, but yeah. I'm talking about a different movie.
I've always thought the Killer Pants thing is legitimately about Killer Pants. It's going to turn out it's like a metaphor for some shit, and I'm going to read it one day. Be like, what the fuck is this? This is about AIDS or something?
I'm talking about the sisterhood of the...
Sisterhood
of the something jeans.
I've never read that either. But yeah, so he's like, you're all right. Let's fucking do this. Because he's all drunk and angry and shit. So he gets in the pod. And I think the baboon starts the process for him. And the thing closes. But as it closes, people, we zoom in up on top of the pod. And the fly has gotten in with him. And he teleports, and he comes out naked and shit and smoke like a god. And then the baboon jumps up on him, and he gets another baboon hug, which I was pretty hyped for. And then it pans over to the computer, and it's like, teleportation complete. Teleportation complete. And that will start the trail of events that lead into this movie. You want to know what they don't do again in this movie? They don't ever show you that fucking baboon. That baboon is gone. He's fucking... Apparently, there's a deleted scene that I don't know if you can actually find it. It might be like it never got out. There's a deleted scene of Jeff Goldblum when he's sort of going crazy. How he's doing the thing, because later in the movie they'll come back to when, you know, that third prototype pod will come back because they want to do something and make one thing at the end. So he's testing this, and so he puts in the baboon and a cat in the other pods, and then it's like a baboon cat mix, and it's all fucked up, and then he fucking bashes its head in, and apparently they did it at like a test screening. And they found that, like, people at that point, after he killed the baboon and the cat, they stopped caring about... Because for the most part of this movie, you're kind of supposed to be... It's like a... You know, you feel bad for dude. You're supposed to. Like, what he's turning into. But at that point, people stopped feeling bad for him when he killed the baboon cat. You know what I mean? So they were like,
I
you can't have a guy bash a baboon cat in the head and then him still be a hero or whatever.
I didn't feel sorry for him at all in any of this
Wow.
movie. He was just cocky and like full of himself the whole time. Even when his ear falls off, he's like, ah ha ha ha.
Yeah. But
It pissed me off, and I was like, God, where's my
you're
fly
like, your
swatter?
fucking ear fell
Yeah.
off. But yeah, so that's where that baboon, I guess, went, Tyler. That fucking died off screen in a scene never to be seen again. Yeah, so Chick gets back to the lab. He's sleeping. And she wakes him up, and he tells her that he went through the pod. He's like, I was drunk and I was angry. He's like, you sleeping with that dude? And she's like, no, we used to be together. You don't have anything to worry about, And he's like, okay. And then he starts to make out with her. But he's making out with it. They do it a couple times where they're making out, but they keep their eyes open, which was very weird. So he's like making out with her. And then it pans down to where those cuts are in his back from that microchip chip. And you see like some stuff growing out of his back. And you're like, oh shit. What's that?
It looks kind of like stitches the first time you see it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
a spoiler: they're not stitches.
They're not. The next morning, he's laying there sleeping, and you can hear the fly. I assume the same fly buzzing, or no, it's not the same fly, different fly buzzing around, and he catches it in his sleep, and he like wakes up, and then he gets up. He's like all quiet, and he goes and he starts doing gymnastic routines on a chair, doing push-ups and all this shit because he now has the strength of a fly. Flies are known for their strength. And he's
Why did you do that? Like it was a Norm Macdonald punchline.
I've been watching a lot of Norm.
The strength of a fly.
Strength of a fly.
Can you just pause? Like you're waiting for like the laughs or whatever.
Because I just sent you that video of him talking about the jockey beating up his wife. He's like, oh, it's not a joke. She has a lot of injuries on her legs.
He was like, spouse abuse isn't funny unless one is tiny. It's so good.
It's so fucking.
I was like, wait, why did you do this?
Let me tell you, when that happened, when I had the strength of a fly in my head, I was like, this is gonna be good. The Norm Macdonald joke was good. I don't know how good the strength of a fly went over, but anyway, yeah. So he's doing these push-up things on a chair. Then he goes to this random fucking bar he has like in his kitchen, and he's doing the fucking whole routine, spinning and shit. Gina Davis has woken up at this point, and she's just like watching him with like this smile, like this is something he does. Yeah, and so he does this whole fucking routine. He's like, cool. Then they go to breakfast, and he has coffee, but he's just like pouring, like he just keeps adding sugar into it. They show the coffee at one point, and it's literally like the sugar has maltated, where it's like over the top of the coffee.
Bounded.
I
don't know what word you're trying to. What fanciness are you trying to?
There's a lot of sugar.
The coffee's crystallized. I don't
maybe.
know.
Yeah, and Gina Davis is even like, man, are you gonna add coffee to that sugar or whatever? And he's like, what? And he's just talking like a million miles a minute. Like he's just fucking going off. I don't have any idea what the fuck he was talking about because there's just so many things he was saying.
He keeps yelling at the waiter.
Yeah, he's a waiter. He's like, I think I will have that.
Yeah. Not a calzone, a cannoli.
Yeah. But yeah, so you can tell that she's like, all right, something's not up here. But apparently it's not weird enough for them to immediately go back to the lab and apparently have like 4 hours of sex or something. Because
she was like, how do you have any juices left or something?
Any liquid, I think is what she said. Yeah. And I was like, oh. Also, all the sex scenes in this movie were terrible. It was like just barely moving and like like it was just I don't know. But yeah, apparently they've been banging for hours. And Jeff Goldblum's feeling good. He's like, yeah, let's keep going. But she's like, no, we need a fucking break. As they like, this also, I thought this was weird. Because this is when, as they're like kissing, she feels the stuff growing out of his cuts. And she's like, you got some hair or something coming out of your cuts back here. And she's like, that's weird. Something's up here. Meanwhile, doesn't say shit about all the blemishes on his
like
face.
His whole face is just fucked.
Like, clearly something's wrong with this guy. But yeah, so she like takes him over to the kitchen. And she's like trying to cut the hairs. And she's like, these are like gristles or not gristles. Is that it? Bristles. That's bristles, not gristle. Gristles on steak. She's like, these are like bristles, and she's trying to cut them, and it's like tough to cut them and shit. And he, he's not. He doesn't really want her to cut them, but she's still doing it. And then I believe there's a break, like it goes to the next day here. I don't think this is the same conversation. Maybe you'll know. Is it the next day or is it the same day where then he's like, all right, time for you to go through the pod? And she's like, I don't want to. And he's like, you're fucking drag, man. You're chicken shit. You're not ready to be part of the dynamic duo. It's like, oh, fuck.
He goes, the same day?
I think it was the same day. Like, he flips really fast.
And he was like, if you don't take the plunge, you don't get the plunge. And all this weird shit.
Yeah.
Like... it was crazy.
So she doesn't want to go through the teleporter thing because she's like, something's up with you, something went wrong. And he's like, fuck you, man. So he's like, I'll find someone who does want to. So then he goes to a bar, and there's a couple of guys arm wrestling. The one guy who, I'm not sure if it's just because I've seen this scene a bunch, or if this guy actually is and stuff, but the guy he ends up arm wrestling, I swear I recognized. And I don't know if it's just because of this scene or if he's actually in other stuff.
It looks like an uncle everyone has.
Yeah. Yeah, he goes to the bar. These guys are arm wrestling and shit. And Jeff Goldblum's like sitting next to this lady. And he tells the guys, he's like, I'll bet you guys $100 I could beat you in arm wrestling. And they're like, get out of here before you get hurt, And he's like, oh, come on, I'll bet you $100. And so they're like, oh, he's being serious. And so they're like, okay. And he's like, all right, if I win, I get to take this lady home. Which, fair, like, I'm pretty sure it's fair to say that she was a lady of the night. Like,
I think she was just a bar whore. Like, you haven't gotten to that point in your life where you go to the bar.
No.
Like
a bar
night,
lady of the night.
And then you get there, and there's just chicks that are there who are like,
yeah,
down and out looking for whoever, know. Like, she was like, I live with my mom and stuff like that.
She did. Well, I thought I could have sworn she was there with the dude he arm wrestles. And so the fact that they were just willing to, like, maybe he was just overconfident, but the way they were willing to, like, bet her so much, I was like, oh, this chick must be just a...
Well, that's the thing, is that the ladies of the bar are always there. They go home with a different guy every night.
Man, you know what that reminds me of? Remember that lady in Horns? Who, like, she was just a drunk and she was in love with Daniel Radcliffe, and she used to just hang out at the bar, like, all sad and drunk, looking for someone to fuck, and she would just think it was Daniel Radcliffe, like, and then he ends up banging her.
Well, that's a little different, because she just had a thing for him.
Did.
Like, this girl has a thing for everybody.
I think she dies. Did she die now? No, she doesn't die.
She should have.
Should have.
Slept with a dude with horns.
Yeah, fucking weirdo. So, yeah, he goes over. He's like, all right, let's fucking arm wrestle. So they start arm wrestling. His boys are cheering him on and shit. But then all of a sudden, it zooms into the hand, and you see this nasty white liquid coming dripping out between their hands and shit. And dude starts winning, and he's going down. And then the next thing you know, the other guy's whole fucking arm just snaps in half. And he's like, ah! And he's yelling shit. Which
What was that foam coming out of the hands? Is that do I just not know enough about ant biology to
I
know
don't
what was going on?
fly.
It looked like the vomit. Oh, sorry, fly, not
Yeah, it
ants.
looked like yeah, it looked like the vomit, but it was coming out
But
of
it
his
was
ants.
yeah. So
That's the problem. I felt like we should have read up on flies before before we watched this movie. Yeah,
I had
like
no clue. I was like, what? What?
I thought
Okay.
maybe like is that what flies used to stick when they're walking?
No, they have little tiny hairs, the same as spiders. That's how spiders can climb on walls,
Shit.
like Spider Man.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, like, you know how flies land on your food and they rub their grubby little hands together?
Boy, do it.
So I wonder if that is the same digestive fluid, and they
Maybe.
put that down on the food, and
Yeah.
that's why they spit in their hands. And I don't know, but anyways,
Anyways, yeah, he
it never
breaks.
comes back up ever again.
It
So
doesn't. He breaks his arm, takes that chick with him. I totally forgot about that arm wrestling scene, and then as soon as it happened, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is like a famous fucking thing. Him breaking this guy's arm in half." Um, so he takes that girl, takes her back to his lab. On the way there, they have some small talk. She's talking about I live with my mom and all this shit. It doesn't have a southern accent. Um, takes the chick up to his lab. He like bangs her, and then the next morning, he's like, "All right, this is the teleporter." He's like, "Time for you to go through the teleporter." She's like, "I don't really want to," and he's like, "Too fucking bad." He like grabs her,
yeah,
starts dragging her, and she's like, "I don't want to," and he's like, "You don't have no choice." But then Gina Davis is like, "Yes, you do," and or no, I'm sorry, very famous thing here. He goes, "Don't be afraid," and then and Gina Davis is standing there in the doorway, and she goes, "No, be afraid, be very
very
afraid,"
afraid.
which
Yeah,
is a famous as fuck line and like tagline, and I always forget that it's the Fly. And like this is the Fly's whole marketing was be afraid, be very afraid. Seems like a weird like when you hear that, you don't automatically go to that must be the Fly. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like I don't know what would come to mind, but it wouldn't be the Fly. But
Maybe that was in the classic too.
I don't think so. I think it was made up for this movie. Like I'm pretty sure that it's just for this one. Um, but yeah, so the hooker chick runs out of there. Or no, I'm sorry. Before that, there is a great little line here where Jeff or she's like, "Who is this?" And Jeff Goldblum goes, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I live with my mom too." And she's like, he's like, "Hello, mother," you know, and she's like, "Ah, fuck you." Uh, so the girl leaves. Gina Davis is like, "Hey, something went wrong. I took those hairs I cut from you and sent them to the lab to get them tested, and they're not human. In fact, it seems like they're insect hairs." And he's like, "You're just jealous. You're making shit up to try to ruin my fucking invention and all this shit." He's like, "You don't know what the fuck you're talking about." So he kicks her out. He goes into the bathroom and he like takes a pill or something, and then he's like looking at himself in the mirror. And then I don't remember how the first nail came off, but he ends up like his fingernails are falling off, and he ends up like pulling a couple of them off and shit. At first, I thought this was gonna be, because I'm sure it's a movie they spoof, but you know the Family Guy, where it's Peter Griffin and he has like and he keeps like carving off his face, and then he ends up being Hank Hill, and he's like, "Ha, propane," and like. But I swear I've seen, and I don't remember what movie it is that's spoofing that, or like ripping the face off, because I think at the end it's like a skull. And I thought for a minute, I was like, "Oh, is it going to be this movie?" But it's not. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Poltergeist. For some reason, that seems like a movie that has that. But anyway, he doesn't do that. He's just ripping off his fingernails, and that white shit is coming out of his fingernails and stuff. Now he's like, "Oh." He's like, something is wrong. He goes over to the computer and he's like, "All right, show me, what my experiment was." And so he sees that there's a second element in the pod, and he's like, "Well, what the fuck is this?" Oh, the computer has I was about to say the computer has a line. That computer has a line I like, which is Jeff Goldblum's typing to it, and it goes, well, if the second element wasn't Brindle, what was it? And the computer responds with, not Brindle. And I was just like, I don't know why I found that so funny, the not Brindle, but it was good. He runs the sequence showing him like infrared of him in the pod getting teleported, and he's able to zoom in and do an ultra zoomed scaled version and show him that the second element in the pod was a fly. And he's like, oh shit. So he asked the computer, did Brindle absorb the fly? And the computer responds with, no, their molecules were fused together. And is the computer the first one that says it, or is it Jeff Goldblum who refers to himself as Brindle Fly?
I think Jeff Goldblum says it.
I think he does as well. I was thinking maybe the computer says Brindle Fly, but I think he's the first one that mentions that. Yeah, so Jeff Goldblum calls Gina Davis back. She comes over. He's pretty fucked up at this point. Like, he comes over, or she comes over, and she's looking for him. And then he pops out, and he's, like, looking all gross. And it plays a super dramatic score for all of 2 seconds. He pops out, and it's like, da, 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 da. It just stops. Like, it was so weird. He sits her down. He's like, I fucked up. He's walking on, it's not, I guess it is crutches.
They're like canes.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah.
But it's like the ones that are like the cane, and they have like the stick on the, and he's walking and shit all weird. Which then later,
normal canes, but okay.
Whatever.
They're not connected. They're nothing.
Yeah. Then later, I don't think he ever has a problem walking. I don't know. It was just this one part.
He's also wearing those gloves too.
Yeah, those fucking gloves.
It's quite an image.
So he's telling her about the fucking fly and, you know, all this shit. And he says that, you know, he thinks that the fly, it's basically acting as a cancer, and it's going to eat through his body, and eventually it'll kill him. And as he's saying that, he's holding this donut, and he's like, and that'll be it. Brindle fly is done. And then he's like, and just throws up this white fucking goo that's disgusting. And he's like, oh, well, that's gross. Yeah, and then his ear falls off, and he's like, my ear. Okay. So she's like hugging him. She's like, we're gonna figure something out, you know. And then the best thing she can do is go and talk to her asshole editor, who's been a dick this whole fucking movie. And I got the hiccups now. And she asks, fuck.
You guys good for those hiccups? An ice cold woodchuck. Brewed in the hills of Chuckalopia. I don't know where it's made.
It's Vermont.
Oh.
So yeah, she goes to that guy, and he's like, don't go back. He's like, just stay away. And he's like, or she's like, well, that's your best advice, really? And he's like, all right, fine. We'll film him and show it to me, and then I'll come up with something. And fuck me. And she's like, okay, I'll do that. And then this is when he's like, hey, can I claim your body after all this? And it's like, what the fuck? Such a weird line. Let me chug some water real fast. That'll help.
Did that scare you? Did that scare you? Did that scare the hiccups away? You know, you do the same thing with holding your breath, you know?
Listen. But I wouldn't be hydrated. Yeah, so she goes back to the lab. He even he's like, you should probably tape me. This would be pretty good for the book or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So she tapes him. And he's talking about what's happening to him, and he's like, oh, it's pretty fucking crazy. And then it pans, and it zooms out, and we see that this is the tape that she's showing to the boyfriend, or not the ex. And he's like, oh my god, this is disgusting, you know? And I don't think he ever comes up with a plan. Like, he just watches the tape, and he's like, oh, that's gross. We go back to the lab again, and now Jeff Goldblum is crawling on the roof and shit. He's like, "Oh yeah, I've gotten pretty good. It's like second nature." Um, she records him once again talking about how his teeth are useless. I think maybe it must have been a scene or two ago where his teeth fell out for the first time.
Yeah.
So he's like, I can't use them. So as a fly, unfortunately, I have to regurgitate on my, and he uses this acid to break down the food, and then I can eat it. And he fucking pukes up on his donut or whatever he's eating, and he starts eating that shit. Or no, I'm sorry, that's the tape she shows to the ex-boyfriend, is the tape of him eating that shit. And that's when he's like, oh my god, this thing's fucking gross. You know, you shouldn't go back there, you know, all the shit. But then he looks over and she's like crying. And he's like, what's wrong? And she goes, I'm pregnant. And he was like, oh, damn. But then, like, I don't know what because then, from my point of view, she was like, I'm pregnant. And then the next thing that happened is she was being wheeled into a hospital.
Yeah.
Like, me, and I was like, oh shit, what the fuck just happened? And she's losing the baby. Also, I guess we got Cronenberg's title wrong here, because she's losing the baby, and so they go into like the room, and this is when David Cronenberg is playing like the doctor down there and shit.
No, no, she's not losing the baby. She's going in to have an abortion.
No.
Both times it's an abortion. Both times.
No, because that when they're wheeling her in there, she's like, I don't want to lose it. Why is this happening to me? And then and then a fucking larva baby comes out. And she's like, ah, ah. And she wakes up and it's a nightmare. And that's what causes her to want to get to the abortion. Because now she's convinced that she has this fucking fly thing inside of her. Which doesn't make sense. Well, I guess they did bang for like 5 hours when he was a fly. Never mind. I take it back. That might make sense. Yeah, so she wakes up and she wants to get an abortion. This is when I messaged Tyler and I was like, I wasn't expecting like this movie to have real life stuff that's going on now with abortion rights and stuff. Like, because they go to the doctor and she's like, I want an abortion. And he's like, well, we have all this stuff. And she's like, I want it now, you know? And, yeah, so shout out to The Fly talking about shit going on nowadays. Back at the lab, the computer doesn't recognize Jeff Goldblum's voice anymore. That's showing how far gone he is from what he was before. The rest of his teeth fall out and shit. He's just a fucking mess. Gina Davis comes to visit him. And I thought that she was here to tell him that she was pregnant, and she couldn't get it out. But Jeff Goldblum, in what I would say is his, maybe not his last, because I think there's another moment late, but one of his last moments of like human thought and like consciousness, is he tells her, he's like, you need to leave. Well, I guess there is a couple, sorry, but he's like, you need to leave. Because insects don't have compassion. We're afraid of insects. Insects are just, they do what they want. They kill what they want, you know. So basically, he's like, I don't know what'll happen to you if you're around me when I'm this fucking thing. So she leaves, and then it turns out what she was going to tell him was that she was going to get the abortion, but she couldn't get it out because her ex-boyfriend is down there waiting to take her to a doctor. But, of course, it pans up, and Jeff Goldblum is, like, up on the roof, and he was listening to her, so now he knows what she's going to do. They go to the doctor. They're like, we want an abortion. I got a little larva baby in here. And he's like, all right, well, I guess we could fucking do it. Let me go get our shit. And so the doc and the ex-boyfriend walk out of the room. And then we get a fucking straight up, Jeff Goldblum just busting through the window of this hospital. And he just picks her up and carries her off.
Superpowers.
Super fly powers, yeah. And yeah, he takes her up to the roof. And this is, it was like I really like this scene actually, where he's telling her, he's like, you know, that baby is like could be the only thing left of the real me and shit. He's like, please don't kill me, you know? And it was like this really like I was like, damn, he's right. And she's like, I can't, it could be, it could be a fucking this what you are now and everything. And yeah, and then he's like, that's too bad. And he says it like it's too bad she won't have the baby. Like, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, he's saying that's too bad because now I'm gonna have to fucking kidnap you, which I think that kind of was what he meant because you never
Who knows. His whole
well,
tone never changes through the whole movie. It's always the same tone.
Yeah, it's kind of hard.
Scared.
Kind of hard to tell when the fly takes over. Also, why is the fly this evil? Why? Are flies just dicks? They're just flying around all the time. Like, if I had a motherfucking teleportation pod.
I think they just, what is it called when you just want your species to survive? Something another? Not
fly supremacy?
Self-preservation.
Oh, okay.
But he explained it right before this. Is like flies don't have feelings. They don't have emotions.
Yeah,
if you don't leave, I'm going to hurt you.
Yeah.
So then she runs off, and then he goes, "Oh, okay, wait, JK," and then goes jumping through windows.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's like, "Oh, that's too bad." And then we cut, and the ex-boyfriend, who the doctor and him saw, Jeff Goldblum take her away. So he shows up at the lab, and he pulls out a bug assault, and he loads it up. Gets ready with some salt, and he fucking all right. I can't do it. I was so happy.
Thomas's humor is so it's so different than well-rested Thomas humor.
Yeah, you didn't like the bug assault.
Yeah, it's like you said it, and then you were looking, waiting for me just to give you a hard time. Go. And I was like,
Yeah. And so he's walking around. And he's like, all right, I'm going to kill this motherfucker when he shows up. And then the next thing you know, Jeff Goldblum jumps down on the dude from the roof. And it lets out this screech. Scared the shit out of me. I was not expecting to get a scare out of this movie. But I was like, oh my God. Which is funny because I feel like you were about to say that screech was very dumb. But
yeah, it was.
Scared the shit out of me.
The funny part is, the part that scared me was the hospital.
Oh, the coming through the window. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that got me. This one was, it sounded like, I don't know if you ever watched Xena Princess Warrior.
Uh-huh.
But whenever she jumps around, she goes, la, 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 or whatever. And it just reminded me of that. Because it comes out of the rafters, and he's like, ha ha, or something. And I was like, what the fuck am I watching? Yeah. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like,
So immediately
he's more annoying than regular flies.
Immediately he knocks the gun out of the dude's hand. He just grabs his hand and fucking vomits on it. And the hand starts melting and shit.
Hold on.
Okay.
He doesn't knock the gun out of dude's hand. The dude gets knocked over, and he points the gun at him, and Jeff Goldblum, not quickly, not using fly power, he just reaches out and grabs it and moves it to the side.
Yeah.
And I was like, just pull the trigger. You got 2 shots. What?
I know. Yeah, so he vomits on his hand. We get a good while of the hand melting and the guy screaming. And then eventually he goes down and he does the same thing to his ankle. Apparently, there's an extended cut or deleted scene that shows like him munching on the ankle and the arm and shit. But they don't do this here. He just like pukes on. I think he's about to eat the ankle. No, that's not true. He's looking at the ankle, but then he goes up to the guy's face. He's about to puke on his face. And this is when Gina Davis comes out from or she's still up on the roof, and she shouts down. She's like, "No, don't do it!" And that stops him from puking. And that was when I was like, at no point in this movie did I feel like this guy was. I guess just Gina Davis being a person doesn't want to see this guy get fucking puked and his face disintegrate. But I was like, this guy's been an asshole this whole movie. I don't know why we're supposed to feel bad for him. I was like, yeah, Jeff Goldblum, get him. But yeah, so she stops him. He goes up and gets her again, brings her back down. And at first, I thought what he was saying was, because he had the prototype pod and everything, and he was like, I'm gonna go in one pod, you're gonna go in the other one, and then we'll come out in the third pod, a happy family and all this shit. And I thought at first, like, he thought that he had figured out a way that somehow, like, if they mixed, they would come out and they would be separate things. And then I realized, oh no, he's just gonna blend them all into one big blob of a person, so they'll all be together and shit. And naturally, she's like, I don't want to do that. So she like goes to push him, his face, but she ends up just ripping off his jaw. And this is when he finally just starts to fucking fall apart and becomes a big ass fly, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, guess he didn't have that thing. Yeah, but he didn't have wings. Like, the fly design's always been weird to me. Like, he doesn't look like a fly. He just looks like a monster.
He had
I guess the eyes
coming out of his back at the end, so maybe he was getting there.
Maybe
he never got the chance.
But anyway, I'm not saying it doesn't look cool, because I thought it looked cool, but I just never thought he looked like a fly. Also, shout out to, I don't know, I would like to go through and see all the movies that we've watched, how many of them have won like Oscars and shit. This movie did win the Oscar for best makeup, which apparently I missed it in the credits, but apparently the first credit is for the makeup guy. Like, it's makeup is this guy, and then it's like Jeff Goldblum and all of them. And so shout out to that dude. But yeah, I'd like to see how many movies we've watched have like won awards, because I gotta tell you, Tyler, I don't think it'd be a lot. I think we won't. Well, we're almost at the end of this. We can go back to that later if we want. Yeah, we're not. So he turns into a fly. He gets himself, or he throws her in the one pod. He goes in the next pod himself. Computer starts doing the whole teleportation thing. But the boyfriend is able to hobble and get the gun. And does he shoot the computer or her pod?
He shoots the cable connecting her pod to the computer.
Okay. So yeah, he shoots that. So she's like off of it, and so Brindlefly is like, what the fuck? So he's like, he breaks through his pod and he's trying to climb out, but before he can do that, the pod does the teleportation. So when he zooms over to the other pod, it is now just Brindlefly has mutated with the teleportation pod, which doesn't make sense to me, because like, I guess since he was outside and like in the pod when it happened, that's why it does it. But if like you could mutate with the pod itself, then how do you stop that from just being in the pod?
When he breaks out, the door falls into the pod.
Okay.
And that's how it works.
All right. Okay. Yeah, but then you would think it would just be the door, but when they open it up, he comes crawling out, and he's like this big blob fly thing, and he has like the wires and shit coming out of his back and everything. Like, he's fucked up. And then I always love moments in movies like this, where the girl has like the shotgun and she's like aiming at him, and then she like drops it, and then he comes over and his one like fly hand foot, he like takes it and he like puts it on his head. I always like shit, I don't know. And she's like, no, I can't do it. Like,
yeah, she's like, I can't do it. And then just blasts him. Yeah. I was like, that didn't last long.
That didn't. Yeah, and so she fucking shoots him. We get a big ass fly head explosion. And then that's the end of the movie. Like, I think it shows her crying for like a second, and then immediately just goes credits, and you're like, all right, I guess, fair play. I guess that was the end of the movie, but it was just weird they didn't draw anything out.
Am I mistaken? Am I thinking Aliens? I always thought the promo for The Fly showed like the big egg. Or is that just the Aliens that I'm thinking?
I know Aliens has the big egg.
Yeah, and it shows it in like the glowing room, whatever.
Yeah, I think that's Aliens.
I kept waiting to see that, to see that Goldblum had laid some eggs.
The Fly, you know what? It's very similar. It's not an egg, I'm putting it in chat, but it's the pod.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at that fucking poster. He's got the one fly hoof thing coming out in the arm. Anyway, but yeah, so that's the end of The Fly. Yeah. This movie had a budget of $9 to $15 million, somewhere in that
Which is
ballpark.
massive if you consider it was 60 years ago.
Yeah,
No, 40 years ago.
it's wild, and made a box office of $60 million. So,
Which is even more money.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that there is like a Fly 2 and shit. Like, I think they made Goldblum obviously was involved, and I don't think honestly anybody from the first one was. Maybe that fucking dude at the bar. He comes back and he's like, "I'm hunting down the flies."
Joke's on you, buddy. I'm half cockroach now.
Yeah. God, fucking if they made a cockroach from it, it's like fucking Edgar from Men in Black. So apparently that movie's 25 years old now. Men in Black. They were showing it at the theater for its anniversary. Which honestly, I saw Jurassic World. I would rather spend my fucking time watching Men in Black again.
I can't. You're trying to talk shit about Vincent D'Onofrio, and we all know I'm a huge fan of Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah.
So.
Well, he's good.
I mean, he was amazing.
He was pretty good. Yeah.
Sugar.
Water. Yeah. What is it? He's like the one where he's like he pulls up in front of that restaurant and he's like fighting with himself in the like. Yeah, that was good.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Great actor.
Believe it or not, he was in a movie called Sinister. Anyway, I don't have any notes for that. I ran through all my notes in the thing. Let's do best of worst of, Tyler.
All right.
Also, I gotta tell you, I don't know if it's every podcast, but I was just going through like every now and then I'll search us up to see what pops up. And when you search us up on the podcast, it has like key moments of the podcast. And like I was like, what the fuck is this? And I clicked on it, and it had like best of worst of. Fucking like I think there was like a highlight where we talked about Chucky, and like there was a joke in there, and like all this shit, and I was like, what the fuck is this? And I think it's like Google automative. I think it's supposed to be like the like if you Google like fucking something Chucky, if that pops up, it's supposed to have like where you could click on that moment where they talk about that. But I don't know how they got like the best of worst of and like the segments in there. But they even had like budget when we break down budget. Which I guess that could be like people looking up what's the budget of the fucking The Fly. But anyway, I thought that was cool. Best of worst of. What is my best of?
It has to be the visual effects, right?
They're great. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like an actual moment. But yeah, the visual effects are probably. I mean, it looks great.
I think the dead monkey or baboon is the best part.
The monkey was because
everything else looks kind of cheesy, but like, and then to be fair, compared to stuff now, it looked cheesy. But for back then, I'm sure all of this was like, holy shit, you know. But
I might say the him on the roof talking about, please don't kill my baby. I don't know. I really like that. His whole like that's the only thing left of me, and all this shit. Which they leave it up for you at the end because she's still pregnant at the end, so it's up to you whether or not she kept it or got rid of it. Apparently they had a couple different endings where like one of them she like has a nightmare and then she wakes up and you can see she's still like pregnant, showing that she kept it. And then other ones where I think she got rid of it. But they went with just to leave it up to you, so who knows. Even though I say who knows, I guarantee you if I look up what The Fly 2 is about, if it's real, it's probably like the baby this lady had. Like, and it killed her. I think it'll
be someone else picking up his research.
Maybe. Watch it be the editor. Like, he's trying to get his own thing. Anyway. But yeah, so I'll say that's my best of. If I had to pick an actual moment instead of just the visual effects. Worst of? Honestly, probably that minute of her taking off the stocking. It was just so awkward. I was like, what are we doing here? I would say also the gymnastic thing,
Hey,
but it gave me my good Norm Macdonald joke that I liked. Go ahead.
Adult's character in the sequel is the adult son of Veronica Quaife and Seth Brundle, a scientist who became a human-fly hybrid as a result of an experiment gone AWOL.
Yeah. Well, now we have to
So,
watch it.
so you were right.
Well, I'm good.
But
Jeff Goldblum says he's in it.
no, no, it just has his name in there. This
Yeah?
is based on the other one. I think they showed clips from the first one.
Man, there ain't fucking nobody in this. Half of the people on this cast list, their Google picture is just a picture of them in the movie. Like,
So, what was
oh, I
your least
take it
favorite
back.
part of this
Michael
movie?
Bolton. It's Michael S. Bolton. What? Oh, I said it. It
What
was
was
the
your?
stocking. Taking the stocking off.
Yeah, it was pretty lame.
I said that, and then I said that I thought about throwing in like the gymnastics thing in there, but I guess that was supposed to be, that it led.
Him showing off his
Yeah.
superpower. Yeah,
So anyway,
that one kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Even though I like Jeff Goldblum in this movie,
mm-hmm.
and I said at the beginning that he was the best part,
If you say
I
he was the
think
worst,
he was the worst part.
What the fuck? Okay.
Because now that I think about, okay, so this whole movie is all about what's that Greek mythology where the guy with he makes his wings, and he makes them out of wax and feathers.
Flew too close to Icarus or whatever.
Icarus.
Icarus.
But I think that's what this is supposed to be.
Yeah.
I think he does, he makes this machine. He's got the power of the gods, blah blah blah. But then he wants to use it on himself, and blah blah blah. And then he pays the consequences for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the whole movie, the guy, like there's a part where she goes and sees him, and then she goes talk to her editor, and he's like, he's so scared and angry, blah blah blah. I never got any of that from him. It was all like, what are you gonna do? This
Yeah.
is me. And there's even like a time where so my least favorite part of the movie is the story, obviously. But there's a time where he talks about how if him and another human
Uh-huh.
transfer again, then he'd be 2/3 human and only 1/3 fly.
Yeah.
And he'd be more human.
That's why I thought at the end he
He
like,
was just gonna
figured
throw
out.
that guy in there.
Oh. Well, I was
Like, 'cause
thinking maybe because like she was pregnant, so she was two people. Well, I guess she was like very. Anyway, that's a whole thing again. But I was like, maybe that'll be like how they. I don't know.
But why didn't he just grab that dude whose hand he threw upon, throw him in the fucking tube,
Yeah.
and then he hops in the other one, and then he'd be like, hey, both men you love in one,
Yeah.
and the fly you hate, or whatever.
Yeah.
Because like there's so many things he could have just started grabbing homeless people. He could have done all kinds of things.
Right. And he
But,
still could have had the power of the fly.
They just kept trying to play this like almost romance part, right? Like almost like a.
Very romancy movie.
So I don't know. That was my least favorite.
All right. What was your favorite? Even though
Probably the ending when it was over. I didn't have to watch it anymore. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I apologize. That's not a sincere answer. When he jumped through the hospital window, it got me. So I want to say that was my favorite moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't like the rubber latex suits that they kept putting him in. It always looked like he was walking with a shitty diaper.
Yeah.
But again, I know that's just the times and what they had going.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. It's a hard one, right? Because like the visual effects were good.
Yeah.
Even like the guy's arm breaking was great.
Yeah.
Like, so I want to say the visual effects that aren't him turning into a fly.
Uh-huh.
That makes sense?
Yeah,
Like,
keep in mind, people, this movie is The Fly. He really only turns into a fly for the last 5 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, he's just like a mutated, like, ah.
So like.
Also, is it just me? Or is it like he shed the skin and somehow grew, like he got taller?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he was talking to the baboon and he was like, fuck it, let's go. I feel like that's when the movie should have really started.
Yeah.
Hey, let's give this a go. And you didn't have to do any of the other stuff. He could have just been like, yeah, that's his girlfriend.
Uh-huh.
You didn't need all that other bullshit story, Like you'd be like, oh, that's her
Yeah.
editor, you know? Like
I really like the baboon screen time in this with him swatting at the fly and everything. And apparently that baboon was super asshole. Like the only people who could control him was Goldblum because he's like fucking 6'4" or something, so he was able to like power him. And I think like the trainer who was there, but like no one like that baboon would just run around doing shit. Which I mean makes sense. It's a fucking baboon, but
yeah, it's a fucking
yeah.
like animals are some of the scariest creatures. Like forget horror movies, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Well,
I mean,
there was that scene in X with the alligator that was like, oh my god.
yeah, it was the scariest scene in the whole
Yeah.
movie. But like, I mean, I'm talking about just real life, right? They're like apes ripping people's faces off and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
You see that video of the? I think I probably sent it to you. Of the guy messing with that orangutan and the fucking like
yeah,
grass. I love that,
grabs his
dude.
shirt with one hand, and the dude's freaking the fuck
I
out.
don't know if you saw the full because the version I saw it and then there was like 10 seconds they cut off the end of it and I found that they eventually are pulling him away and his shoe comes off and that fucking thing comes like an inch from just latching onto that dude's toes with like teeth and stuff. That dude almost lost his toes to that fucking orangutan. Also, I my whole life I've called it an orangutan. It's not an orangutan. It's an orangutan, but I've always called it a tang. So
You sure?
yeah, it's an orangutan. But
Did you learn this from some British guy or something?
no, if you look, it's like it's written orangutan.
I don't think so. That doesn't sound right.
Yeah, I know it doesn't because orangutan sounds better.
It sounds like how British people say aluminium, and then we say aluminum.
Aluminium, yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if this is right.
yeah, orangutans. That's how it's spelled.
I mean, I know how to spell, but I don't think it's
Well,
pronounced
let's
that right.
see. Let's see.
Go to the Google speaker.
Pronounce. Yeah. Here
I'm
we
still
go.
not gonna agree, even
Here
if
we
it
go.
says.
Yeah. Here we go. Let's see what this is.
Orangutan.
Fuck.
Let that bitch know. She sound British as fuck, man. She don't know.
This is the American pronunciation.
Yeah.
Let's do British. Okay.
Yeah, so put it to England or whatever.
Orangutan.
Orangutan.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because we're Southern.
Oh, we could do it slow. Hold on. For us.
we actually-
Orangutan.
Oh, that wasn't.
That was the same thing, but just
Yeah,
slower.
Anyway.
Now I just felt wrong and more time. Like,
Yeah, you have to listen to it longer.
yeah. Man, this bitch slowed down her words even for me. I'm
Yeah.
so dumb. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. I needed
Bust
that.
out the helmet. Anyway. All right. Well, hey, thanks for watching.
What are we watching next week?
That's a good question, Tyler.
We have Black Phone, which just came out.
Yeah, we're not watching any of those.
We have Insidious 5, I think I saw.
Insidious 5.
It was just announced. It was
Yeah.
just announced.
We haven't watched 2 or 3. We're gonna watch a movie that I believe we have talked about watching a lot on this podcast, and
This is never good.
we've never watched it.
You're not gonna say Matilda, are you?
We're not watching Matilda, even though that'd be a good movie. It's kind of scary. So we're watching the movie. Also it was a debate because there's 2 movies of the same, and it was a debate which one we watch. So we're gonna watch a movie. The premise of it scared the shit out of me as a kid, and I've never watched it, and so I'm ready to be like scared. I hope it scares the shit out of me. So Tyler, next week we're gonna watch Ringu from like 1998 or whatever.
Oh, we're watching the Japanese version?
The
We're not watching
Japanese
Ring?
version. We're gonna watch that. Just because in my mind the Japanese version is probably scarier. So we're gonna watch that.
There's a Japanese movie I saw the other day that I wanted to watch, but I think I forgot the name of it now.
There was some video I watched. This guy talking about like the scariest scene of all time. And he was talking about like the movie itself was mediocre, but the scene was scary as shit. And I watched it and legitimately, like, I didn't even know like the context of what it was, but it like made my stomach like what? And I was like, oh god, where it was like this lady in the dark down this hall, and she's like walking real slow, and then she gets in like this one portion of moonlight, and then she like stops and makes her like do like this weird fucking move that was super creepy the way it happened and stuff. Yeah, so I need to look up that video game. Maybe we'll watch that movie one day. Even
This
though the
movie
guy
was like
said
a
it was.
guy who was like a security guard, and he was standing in front of a building or on a bridge,
Mm-hmm.
and there was like a scary ghost girl like walking up on him, and it
Ooh.
was called like the missionary or something like that.
Uh huh.
The waiting or something, or
Yeah.
the maintaining or so, I don't. I have to
Something.
look it up.
Yeah. So we'll watch Ringu. I hope it's good. It's got a lot of hype built up around it. So we'll see if it.
Hype. It's 20-year-old movie.
Listen, we'll see if it lives up to any of that.
I'm having spaghetti for dinner tonight. It has a little bit of ringu in it.
Hey.
Oh wait, that's ragu.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah. And anyway, also I mentioned a little bit my micro review of Jurassic World Dominion. That movie was fucking terrible. it was.
How
uh,
dare you?
You know, that first Jurassic World I thought was all right. The second one was like, nah. This one was awful. Like when we went into the theater, I saw it with my parents, and when we went in,
Loser.
I asked them. I was like, "How many times do you think they're gonna do the hand up to the dinosaur things?" As like a joke, dude. They did it every 10 minutes. There's one point where fucking Sam Neill or whatever. By the way, am proud to say that Sam Neill was the best part of the movie to me, which I was very happy because he's my Event Horizon man. That sounds weird, but he's my boy from Event Horizon, so I was happy to see him back. I know most people are like Jurassic Park, he's the guy. Nah, Event Horizon, welcome home. But yeah, there's a where it's like him, Chris Pratt, and like someone else, and they're all doing it, and I was like, this is ridiculous. But yeah, it was really bad. Also, my mom had no idea who I don't remember his name in the movie, but the Asian dude from Oz, who's like the bad guy in every movie.
I think his name's Chang, Dr. Chang.
Something like that. And
It
like
might just be racism.
yeah, he's there, and my mom's like, I don't know who this guy is. And I was like, he's in every fucking movie. What do you mean?
He's been in a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean just even
Including all the
specifically
Jurassic
Jurassic
Parks.
Park. He's
Yeah.
in every one of them, I think.
He's in Law and Order Special Victims.
Yeah.
He's like the psychologist. He's in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's the guy from Mulan.
Yeah. I will say though, if you remember, I think it must have been the Jurassic Park episode we did. I talked about how in recent movies they got rid of what I thought was like one of the coolest dinosaurs, which is the dinosaur that kills Newman with the fucking and spitting and shit. Jurassic World Dominion, a lot of those dinosaurs in there. So I was very happy to see those. But anyway, whenever you watch it, Tyler, let me know your thoughts about it, because I thought it was fucking terrible. And if anyone's seen it, watching this, comment down below. Papa Hades, if you're watching, you like Jurassic Park, I imagine you've probably seen it. So
I was watching a video today about this fat guy who lost 200 pounds, and he ended up killing himself.
Oh.
Because when he was a fat guy, he'd always pull his shirt down, right, to hide his gut or his belly or whatever.
Yeah.
And even after he lost all the weight and he was like moving on with his life and he was happy and fit, he couldn't stop pulling his shirt down. It was like a tick or whatever. And it just always reminded him how he was fat. And then he killed himself.
Well, that's a good way to end the podcast.
You're just talking about things you watched, huh? You know,
dude, what a great... The podcast starts with necrophilia, ends with guy. It does. The first word of this podcast is going to be necrophilia. Anyway, there's a movie like called Necrophiliac that I wanted to buy. I have the Blu-ray, the combo pack of 1 and 2 in my box because it's supposed to be like this real disturbing, nasty movie, and like you can't watch it on like Prime, and that's why I was gonna buy the Blu-ray. Haven't watched it yet though, or I haven't bought it yet. Anyway,
I need to watch that. I live it. You know?
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. Some shorts and stuff might be coming out. We don't have anything planned for overtime. We've been busy, so we'll see if we could fit anything in. We're
I'm
supposed
so
to,
fucking dumb.
yeah.
You said shorts are coming out. I feel like merch.
Yeah, yeah, we got shorts. Um, yeah. Link to the gaming channel and everything is in the description. Next week, Ringu. Remember, guys, go watch it this week. Prepare, get ready.
Because if not, we're ruining that bitch for
We're
you.
ruining it, yeah. And you probably won't. Well, no, you probably. I will say at this point, how we got the podcast down. You can probably listen and know what happened in the movie. I would say. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, all right. See you guys next week. Ringu. About two videos up on the gaming channel. It's been a while since we had 2 videos up in a week. There's a Hell Let Loose and a Rocket League. So
Because you've gotten lazy. That's only.
no, we just went through a period there where we didn't play shit for.
No, what
fucking-
is Wii? And there's none of those Wii stuff.
There we whatever.
You played 9 Yakuza games back to back.
Only 7.
And
well,
they're
yeah.
like 40+ hour games. So every time,
Yeah.
we went to do something, you were like, I'm just fighting these gangs in the streets of Tokyo or whatever.
Come
And
on,
we'd
road
be
show,
like, you son of a bitch. Like, see?
Yeah, you posted the picture of Ichiban from Yakuza 7 yesterday, and I was like, is he waiting on me to like say who that is or something? I didn't know why you posted it, but and then
It was a
I went.
shock.
It
was like
was, yeah,
And it was just a twofer because it was the Yakuza guy. So I went, ooh, that's a twofer.
yeah.
So,
All right, thanks for watching. See you guys next week for Ringu. We're probably pronouncing that fucking wrong. We gotta learn before we get back.
just call it The Ring, but all right.
Well, listen, The Ring is a different movie. Anyway, next week. See you there.
See ya.